Some of the points that South Africa has raised in its prosecution. I mean, one of the key ones is the statements by Mr. Netanyahu and other ministers. One that became very prominent yesterday was the invocation of the biblical reference of Amalek and the massacre that followed. I mean, why did Mr. Netanyahu invoke such a violent biblical tale?
Because
if not to prompt a genocide? No.
We are committed to destroying Hamas. We are committed to destroying the monsters who perpetrated the bloodiest
massacre.
So
why talk about Amalek?
Because it is a very powerful... I don't want to get into biblical exegesis here and start having a theological debate with you, because the Prime Minister knows exactly how that will be understood by the Israeli people, who clearly understand biblical references.
It would mean kill them all, which is what the Amalek story was about.
All of Hamas, because everyone in Israel understands who the enemy is. We've been very clear, in word and in deed, that the Palestinian people are not our enemy, and we hope to live alongside them in peace in a post-Hamas Gaza. But we are going to destroy the
But what happened in the biblical reference? It wasn't a searching for a minority of terrorists. It was killing everybody. And that is what's happening in Gaza.
The Prime Minister was referring to Hamas. The entire Israeli public understood he was referring to Hamas. The only people who don't seem to understand that are the journalists who clearly have less of a grasp of the book of Exodus than the Israeli public and the Prime Minister. We have been very clear, in both in word and in deed, the Palestinian people are not our enemy. We're going after Hamas because Hamas told us it wants to perpetrate more October 7th massacres.
Well, this is what you say.
It will if we don't... No, this is what Hamas said.
There is a massive gulf between what you say and what you do, because you say you're going after Hamas,
this is not
but you kill civilians.
This is what... Krishnan, I wish we... Krishnan, war is awful. War is awful. We don't want this war. We didn't ask for this war. We didn't expect this war. Hamas declared war on us. Hamas declared war on us with an invasion by air, land and sea, and we are now fighting that war. And we are fighting a war because we want to end it. But we want to end it in a way that makes sure that Hamas cannot attack us again, as it tells us day and night that it wants to murder us again. We're fighting to bring back the hostages. We don't want this war, Christian. 350,000 people in reserves is 700,000 Israeli parents who are not sleeping tonight.
And there are many people who will accept that and understand that and accept the motivation. But it is the way that you are prosecuting that war that has led to this particular case in the International Court of Justice.
No, Christian. It's the fact that South Africa has chosen to align itself diplomatically with Hamas and Iran that means it is now acting as the legal arm of the Hamas terrorist organization.
Well, that again is clever rhetoric to basically say South Africa is a terrorist.
It is saying it's saying that South Africa has decided to play advocate for the devil and serve as the legal defense of Hamas. And yes, it has made itself criminally complicit with the Hamas rapist regime by giving it political and legal cover. Christian, what South Africa is doing here is not fighting racism, it's fighting pro bono on the side of the biggest racist, because it's telling Hamas, we are going to shield you from the consequences of the deadliest terror attack since 9/11. And you can keep going because the international community will tell Israel it has no right to defend itself.
How do you explain that video that was played in court yesterday of Israeli soldiers singing about Amalek and singing about the fact that there were no innocent civilians?
And in every war, soldiers may perform things for social media that have absolutely nothing to do with the declared goals of this war, and everyone at every level understands.
But it revealed their goals.
That this goal, and again, you keep going back to this Amalek reference, refers to the destruction of Hamas. It refers to the destruction of the terrorist organization. It refers to the destruction of the terrorist organization.
But in that video, we see them chanting about their own
innocence. The Prime Minister has been clear, and the Defence Minister and the War Cabinet, and all those who make decisions, including the Chief of Staff and all the senior generals, that our war is a war against Hamas and not the Palestinian people.
So were those soldiers wrong? Was that chanting wrong? Had a senior officer or a politician come in, would they have said, stop that, that's wrong?
I'm not familiar with the particular video. I didn't watch
the video that was played in court yesterday.
I haven't watched that particular video. I was on a flight from Tel Aviv yesterday during the proceedings. But of course, if soldiers say things that are not in accordance with the military goals of the campaign, that is not acceptable. And the army has already disciplined soldiers on occasions when they have deviated from the discipline and the standards that we uphold.
So you accept that there could be soldiers who are deviating from your stated goals and killing civilians. Are there any investigations going on?
Krishnan, on cases where soldiers are believed to have acted in violation of the very severe standards to which we hold ourselves, that is, of course, investigated. But that is not what South Africa...
current investigations?
But notice that this is where we're taking the question now. It started with South Africa making a blanket and outrageous statement that cheapens the memory of the Holocaust by accusing Israel of genocide for fighting to bring back the hostages who are trapped in the terror dungeons. And now you're asking about whether there are occasional misdemeanors by soldiers who produce something not entirely appropriate for TikTok. And this shows just how spurious and specious
I'm not
South
talking
Africa's
about
claim is.
occasional misdemeanors. We're talking about more than 24,000 people killed.
Krishnan, the civilian casualties...
That's an extraordinary number of civilian casualties.
And it's tragic. And it's tragic, Krishnan, everyone who has been killed since October 7th would still be alive if Hamas had not declared war. If Hamas were not fighting this war from densely populated areas, and no one else would be hurt.
Yes, but this didn't
Hamas
start on October the 7th
and laid down
in their
its
terms,
arms.
did it?
You're right.
You know, you can say this would not have happened had October the 7th not happened. They would say October the 7th wouldn't have happened had Israel not occupied Gaza in the first place.
I would be very wary of trying in any way to contextualize the atrocities of October 7th.
I'm explaining what they would say. I'm not contextualizing. I'm saying trying to work out when this began is a very confusing game.